The burden of birthmarks. The distress signal pulsed through the void like a dying heartbeat. Commander Nikolai Voss leaned forward in his captain's chair, eyes fixed on the crimson blip dancing across his navigation display. His vessel, the Nomad's Resolve, had been mapping the asteroid belt in the Cygnus sector when they'd picked up the transmission, weak, but distinctive in its pattern. "Analysis?" he asked, voice cutting through the hum of the bridge. Lieutenant Petra Dorn, his second-in-command, studied her console with practiced precision. Escape pod signature. Silurian make, but... She frowned, registry's been scrubbed. Trajectory suggests it launched from a larger vessel approximately 14 hours ago. Nikolai ran a hand through his salt-and-pepper hair. Life signs. 1 passenger. Vital readings unstable. Standard protocol dictated immediate notification to the Galactic Alliance. Distress signals in disputed territories were often complicated, politically, legally, ethically. But Nikolai had never been one to hide behind regulations when lives hung in the balance. "Plot intercept course," he ordered. 3 hours later, the Nomad's Resolve hovered beside the battered escape pod. Its hull was scorched black, propulsion systems failing, life support barely operational. Through the viewport, Nikolai could see the passenger, motionless, strapped into a crash harness. "Bring it aboard," he commanded. "And alert Dr. Lowell to prepare for emergency treatment." The pod scraped against the loading bay floor as tractor beams guided it into the ship. Emergency crews swarmed around it, cutting tools slicing through the damaged hatch. When they finally pulled it open, Nikolai was the first to step forward. Inside lay a woman, unconscious but breathing. Her face was delicate, elegant features marred by a gash across her left cheek. But what struck Nikolai wasn't her injury, it was the intricate pattern of luminescent blue markings that flowed across her visible skin like liquid starlight. "Silurian," he murmured, recognizing the signature traits of the ruling class from the Centauri system. "But... Sir," one of the medics interrupted, "those markings, they're the Taurus luminescence." Nikolai's eyes widened. The Taurus family ruled the Silurian Empire with absolute authority, their bloodline allegedly pure for generations. Yet here was someone bearing their name and the unmistakable genetic anomaly that the Silurians considered a mark of impurity, a mutation ruthlessly eliminated from their gene pool for centuries. "Get her to medical," he ordered. Dr. Lowell, a weathered man with steady hands and piercing eyes, worked methodically to stabilize the woman. 3 broken ribs, moderate concussion, severe dehydration, he reported. "But she'll live." Nikolai nodded, gaze fixed on the mysterious markings that pulsed gently beneath her skin. "Do we know her identity?" "The pod's computer was encrypted, but we found this." Dr. Lowell handed him a small metallic disc bearing the seal of House Taurus. "Only royalty carries these authentication markers." 2 days passed before she regained consciousness. Nikolai was reviewing star charts when Dr. Lowell's call came through. By the time he reached medical, she was sitting upright, posture rigid despite her injuries. Her eyes, piercing violet, another Silurian trait, locked onto him immediately. "You're safe aboard the Nomad's Resolve," Nikolai began. "I'm Commander Nikolai Voss," she finished, voice soft but steady. "Your reputation precedes you, Commander. The hero of the Rigel conflict who chose exile rather than follow questionable orders." He stiffened slightly. "And you are?" "Lilith," she replied. "Lilith Taurus, though I suspect that name means nothing to you beyond historical records." "The governor's daughter," Nikolai said, connecting the pieces. "Believed dead 5 years ago in a private shuttle accident." A bitter smile crossed her face. Death was the kinder fiction. Imprisonment is less glamorous for official announcements. Nikolai pulled a chair closer to her bed. "You're a long way from Silurian space." "I escaped," she said simply, then hesitated before continuing. "My father kept me hidden since childhood. These," she gestured to the luminescent markings tracing her collarbone, appeared when I was 8. The Taurus luminescence, genetic evidence of impurity in our bloodline. I've heard it rumored, Nikolai acknowledged, but never seen. Few have. Those born with it rarely survive beyond infancy. Her fingers traced the patterns absently. I was spared only because my mother threatened to expose the truth, that the mutation runs through the Taurus line, that their claims of genetic perfection are lies. And now? Now she's dead, and my father's patience expired with her. Lilith's voice hardened. When he discovered I'd been communicating with outsiders, learning about the worlds beyond our system, he decided I'd become too dangerous to keep. So he tried to eliminate you. Not personally. My father never dirties his hands. She looked away. My own security detail received the orders. One had enough conscience to warn me before they executed them. Nikolai watched her carefully. There was strength in her posture, intelligence in her eyes, a survivor's instinct beneath royal composure. I can arrange transport to the nearest neutral station, he offered. From there. Their conversation was interrupted as Lieutenant Dorn burst through the door. Commander, we're being hailed by a Solarian diplomatic vessel. They're demanding immediate communication. Nikolai's jaw tightened. Patch it through to my quarters. I'll be there shortly. On the screen in his private chamber, Governor Hyperion Taurus appeared, a man whose features mirrored his daughter's, though colder, more severe. His eyes revealed nothing as they fixed on Nikolai. Commander Voss, he began, voice smooth as polished marble. I understand you've recovered something that belongs to me. Nikolai maintained a neutral expression. We responded to a distress signal, Governor. Standard protocol. Indeed. And your adherence to protocol is commendable. A thin smile crossed Hyperion's face. However, the woman you've rescued is a matter of delicate internal politics. Your daughter seems to be recovering well, Nikolai replied, watching the governor's expression flicker momentarily. Ah. She's conscious then. And has been speaking. Hyperion clasped his hands. Commander, what Lilith may have told you is the desperate fiction of a troubled mind. She suffers from delusions, paranoia, side effects of her unfortunate condition. Her condition being the genetic markers visible on her skin. Hyperion's smile tightened. A regrettable aberration. One that required us to shelter her from public life, for her own protection. She claims imprisonment, not protection. Perspectives differ, especially from unstable minds. The governor leaned forward. Commander, I propose a solution beneficial to both our interests. Return my daughter, and the Solarian Empire will grant you full reinstatement to your former position in the Alliance, with commendations. Nikolai's expression remained unchanged. And if I believe her account instead? Then perhaps a more personal arrangement. Hyperion's voice lowered. My daughter, despite her flaws, carries royal blood. By our laws, whoever returns her to us may claim her hand in marriage. A political alliance that would elevate you beyond your wildest ambitions. The offer hung in the air between them. Nikolai felt disgust rise in his throat, not at Lilith, but at the man who would trade his daughter like currency. I'll consider your proposal, he said carefully. We'll rendezvous at coordinates I'll transmit separately. When the communication ended, Nikolai found Lilith standing in his doorway. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with determination. You heard, he stated rather than asked. Enough. She stepped forward. My father offers me as a prize while planning my execution the moment I return. I have no intention of returning you to him. Then what? She demanded. Selling me to another faction. Using me as leverage against the Empire. Nikolai met her gaze directly. I was thinking of Helios Haven. Her brow furrowed. The outlaw settlement. Why would you? Because every person there has a story like yours, he interrupted. Cast out, declared imperfect, unwanted by the societies that created them. He paused. Including me. Understanding dawned in her eyes. You're one of them. I help when I can. The Haven exists because there are places in this galaxy where differences aren't merely tolerated, they're valued. Lilith studied him, the luminescent markings pulsing slightly faster with her heightened emotion. My father won't stop searching. He can't allow me to exist freely, I'm living proof of his dynasty's lie. Then we ensure you're somewhere he wouldn't think to look, Nikolai replied, among people he considers beneath his notice. For the first time since her rescue, Lilith's posture relaxed slightly. What's your plan? First, we make your father believe he's won. Nikolai tapped his console, bringing up a star chart. Then, we disappear. As the nomads resolve altered course, appearing to head toward the Solarian rendezvous point, Lilith stood on the observation deck, watching the stars stretch into streaks of light. The luminescent patterns on her skin seemed to pulse in rhythm with the ship's engines, no longer a mark of shame, but perhaps a beacon guiding her towards something she'd never dared imagine, freedom. Sanctuary among outcasts. Helios Haven emerged from the dust clouds of the Callisto Belt like a patchwork dream, a collection of interconnected habitats, repurposed mining vessels, and terraformed asteroids bound together by necessity and hope. Nikolai guided the unmarked shuttle through the settlement's defensive grid, his hands steady on the controls while Lilith watched from the co-pilot's seat. It's beautiful, she whispered, violet eyes wide as she took in the sprawling, makeshift metropolis illuminated by the distant sun. Nikolai smiled faintly. Not what you expected. I expected desperation. Squalor. Her luminescent markings pulsed softly along her neck and wrists. This has purpose. Structure. Built by people who know what it means to create something from nothing, he replied, guiding them toward a docking port extending from what appeared to be a converted cargo hauler. 3 weeks had passed since their narrow escape from the Solarian patrol. Governor Hyperion had been deceived by their initial rendezvous course, but only temporarily. By the time he realized the deception, Nikolai had transferred Lilith to a nondescript shuttle and sent the Nomad's Resolve, with Lieutenant Dorn temporarily in command, on a highly visible mission in the opposite direction. The docking clamps engaged with a metallic thud. Lilith tensed as the airlock cycled open, revealing a tall woman with copper-toned skin and cybernetic implants framing her left eye. Nikolai, the woman greeted, her accent thick with the rhythms of the outer colonies. Been too long. Freya. He clasped her forearm in greeting. How's Haven holding up? Same as always. One crisis after another, somehow still standing. Freya's augmented eye whirred softly as she focused on Lilith. This the one you mentioned in your transmission? Lilith straightened, the royal posture ingrained since childhood asserting itself despite her efforts to appear inconspicuous. I'm Lilith. Freya's expression remained neutral, but her cybernetic eye flickered, scanning, analyzing. Solarian. Highborn, judging by those bone structures. Her gaze lingered on the luminescent markings. And carrying the Taurus mutation. Interesting. Can you help her? Nikolai asked. Depends what kind of help she needs. Freya stepped aside, gesturing them forward. Come. District Council's waiting. The journey through Helios Haven was a revelation for Lilith. Unlike the sterile, perfectly ordered corridors of her father's citadel, the settlement buzzed with chaotic life. Markets spilled across thoroughfares, filled with goods from 100 worlds. Children, some with obvious genetic modifications, others bearing scars or prosthetics, darted between stalls. The air smelled of cooking food, machine oil, and recycled atmosphere. Most striking were the people themselves. No one attempted to hide their differences. A group of engineers with scaled skin worked alongside humans with extra limbs. A merchant with bioluminescent implants similar to Lilith's own markings haggled cheerfully with customers. Everyone here is. Lilith began. Different, Nikolai finished. By choice or circumstance. The district council chambers occupied what had once been a ship's cargo bay, now transformed into a circular forum with mismatched seating arranged around a central platform. 7 figures awaited them, representatives of Haven's largest communities. Dominating the gathering was Warden Orson, a massive man with grafted exoskeletal enhancements visible along his arms. Beside him sat Dr. Tanvi, whose translucent skin revealed glimpses of her circulatory system, a rare condition from one of the terraforming colonies. The others were equally distinctive, Julian with his quartet of cybernetic arms, Mei Lin, whose eyes shifted color with her emotions, Rahal, marked by ceremonial scarification, Benicio, whose anti-gravity chair hovered slightly above the floor, and Elder Thaddeus, whose age-lined face contrasted with the youthful vitality of his genetically rejuvenated body. Freya took her place among them while Nikolai and Lilith remained standing in the center. The council recognizes Commander Voss, Warden Orson announced, voice resonating through the chamber. What brings you back to Haven with such interesting company? Nikolai stepped forward. I seek sanctuary for Lilith Taurus, daughter of Governor Hyperion, ruler of the Solarian Empire. A murmur rippled through the gathering. Dr. Tanvi leaned forward, her transparent fingers interlaced. The same Solarians who declared our genetic modifications abominations, and denied medical aid during the Cygnus pandemic. The same empire that blockaded trade routes to force unmodified worlds to reject Haven's refugees. Julian added, all 4 of his mechanical arms crossing simultaneously. Lilith felt their hostility like a physical force. She stepped forward, pushing past the fear constricting her throat. I am not my father, she declared, forcing strength into her voice. I bear his name, but I've lived as his prisoner, hidden away because of these. She extended her arms, allowing the luminescent patterns to pulse visibly. The same marks that would make me welcome among you made me an embarrassment to him. Pretty words, Rahal observed, trace patterns on his face shifting as he frowned. But words cost nothing. I bring more than words, Lilith countered. I bring knowledge. Access codes. Security protocols. Everything I memorized during my years of isolation, studying systems I was never meant to understand. Elder Thaddeus stroked his beard thoughtfully. Information that could protect Haven from Solarian aggression. Information that could change the balance of power across 3 sectors, Nikolai affirmed. But more importantly, I bring you someone who deserves the same chance you all received, to live without shame for who and what she is. The council deliberated for hours, questioning Lilith about her father's empire, her knowledge, her intentions. When they finally granted her probationary residence, she almost collapsed with relief. You'll be assigned quarters in the Artemis section, Freya informed her. Under Nikolai's sponsorship. What does that mean? Lilith asked as they navigated the winding corridors of the residential district. It means I'm responsible for you, Nikolai explained. Standard procedure for newcomers. The quarters were modest, a 2-room habitat with basic furnishings, recycled air, and a small viewport that offered a sliver of starfield visibility. To anyone raised in luxury, it might have seemed primitive. To Lilith, after years confined to gilded rooms where her every movement was monitored, it represented unprecedented freedom. It's perfect, she whispered. Days turned to weeks as Lilith adapted to life in Helios Haven. She worked alongside Dr. Tanvi, whose initial suspicion gave way to grudging respect when Lilith's knowledge of Solarian medicine proved valuable in treating a refugee child's genetic condition. She learned navigation from Julian, who discovered her natural aptitude for spatial mathematics. Gradually, she found her place, not as a governor's daughter, but as herself. Nikolai watched her transformation with quiet pride. He had sponsored refugees before, but none had embraced Haven's philosophy with such determination. None had worked so tirelessly to earn trust. You've done well, he told her one evening as they shared a meal on the observation deck. The council's impressed. Lilith smiled, her luminescent markings glowing softly in the dimmed light. This place, it feels more like home than anywhere I've ever been. Before Nikolai could respond, alarms blared throughout the settlement. Emergency lights bathed them in crimson as Freya's voice echoed through the communication system. All defense personnel to stations. Unidentified vessels approaching. This is not a drill. On the main command deck, chaos reigned. Tactical displays showed 3 ships entering Haven's defensive perimeter, sleek, predatory vessels with weapons already charged. Mercenaries, Warden Orson growled. Black Star Brigade. Lilith felt ice in her veins. My father's preferred hired guns when he needs plausible deniability. Nikolai studied the approaching formation. How did they find us? Tracker, Lilith realized with sudden horror. My authentication disk, they must have planted something inside it. The lead mercenary ship opened a communication channel. A scarred woman with a captain's insignia appeared on screen. Attention, Helios Haven. I am Captain Riva of the Black Star Brigade. We have no quarrel with your settlement. Surrender Lilith Taurus, and will withdraw peacefully. Warden Orson stepped forward. Haven doesn't surrender its people. Any of them. Then you've chosen destruction. Captain Riva's face hardened. We have orders to retrieve her by any means necessary. The transmission ended. Moments later, the first barrage struck Haven's outer shields. Evacuate the civilian sections, Orson ordered. All defense crews to battle stations. Lilith grabbed Nikolai's arm. This is my fault. I brought this to your home. Our home, he corrected firmly. And Haven has survived worse. But as the attack intensified, it became clear that the mercenaries were better armed than anticipated. Shield generators failed in 2 sectors. Hull breaches were reported in the lower quadrants. We can't hold them off indefinitely, Freya reported grimly. Our defense grid wasn't designed for this kind of assault. Lilith stared at the tactical display, watching as Haven's outer structures took hit after hit. These people, who had welcomed her, taught her, protected her, were dying because of her presence. I can stop this, she said suddenly. Nikolai turned to her sharply. Don't even think about surrendering. Not surrender. Her eyes gleamed with determination. My father's ships use Solarian security protocols. The same ones I memorized. Understanding dawned on Nikolai's face. You can override their systems. If I can access their communication frequency, she confirmed. I need 5 minutes with their command channel. Warden Orson hesitated, then nodded to his communications officer. Make it happen. Lilith's fingers flew across the console as she accessed the mercenary fleet's encrypted channels. Lines of code streamed across the screen as she bypassed security measures with practiced precision. How did you learn this? Nikolai asked, watching her work. When you're imprisoned with nothing but surveillance systems and data terminals for company, she replied without looking up, you either go mad or learn to manipulate them. I chose the latter. With a final command sequence, she gained access. I'm in their navigation and weapons systems. Initiating emergency shutdown. On the tactical display, the mercenary vessels suddenly went dark, their weapons powering down, shields failing. Before Captain Riva could react, Lilith opened a direct channel to her bridge. This is Lilith Taurus, she announced, allowing her luminescent markings to pulse visibly on the transmission. Return to my father and deliver this message, I am no longer his secret shame. I am no longer his to command or control. Her voice strengthened. Tell him that if he sends forces against Helios Haven again, I will release every state secret I memorized during my captivity to every system in the Centauri sector. Captain Riva's face contorted with rage. You wouldn't dare. I've already prepared the data packages, Lilith continued calmly. 1 command from me, and 2 decades of Solarian political manipulation becomes public knowledge. She paused. Your choice, Captain. Return with my message, or face the consequences of failure. Minutes later, the mercenary vessels retreated, limping away on auxiliary power. The Haven's defense control room erupted in cheers and relief. Freya clapped Lilith on the shoulder. Impressive. Will they be back? Warden Orson asked. Nikolai shook his head. Not like this. Her father's too strategic to waste resources on failed tactics. He'll try something else eventually, Lilith acknowledged. But we'll be ready. In the aftermath of the attack, Haven changed. The shared defense against an external threat had united its disparate communities. Work crews from all districts collaborated to repair damaged sections. New security protocols were implemented based on Lilith's insider knowledge of Solarian tactics. 6 months after her arrival, Lilith stood beside Nikolai on the newly constructed observation platform overlooking the settlement. Around them, Haven pulsed with life, stronger, more unified than before. The Council's offering you permanent citizenship, Nikolai told her. And a position on the Security Advisory Board. Lilith smiled, her luminescent markings glowing softly in harmony with the station's ambient lighting. I never imagined this. Having a purpose. Belonging somewhere. You earned it. He hesitated, then added, I'm proud of you. She turned to face him, reaching for his hand. The gesture was simple but carried weight, a connection neither had expected when they first met among the wreckage of her escape pod. Thank you, she said softly. For seeing me when everyone else looked away. I saw someone worth saving, he replied. Now everyone else sees it too. Below them, the lights of Helios Haven sparkled against the void, a constellation built not by cosmic chance but by deliberate choice. A sanctuary for those deemed imperfect, transformed into something far greater than perfection could ever achieve. Lilith's luminescent markings pulsed once, brightly, no longer a burden but a badge of pride. In a universe of cold stars and colder politics, they had found something rare and precious, a place where differences weren't merely tolerated but celebrated as the very foundation of strength.